The 602nd edition of the Four Corners podcast starts right now.
This is the Four Corners podcast.
Elton ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered Marvin. He scores. 17 seconds left. And he was fouled. Here we go. Lawson with a runner. No. The rebound. Hansbrough at the gun. Got it.
They were 4 for 24.
Hansbrough on a switch on Paulus. A deep three. And Green rips down the rebound in traffic. 4-on-1.
What a great job. What a terrific job in transition. I mean, you couldn't plan that any better as a coach.
Tipped away by Johnson. It's loose. Page. Johnson.
Oh, they're dancing in the aisles. They're high-fiving. They're celebrating. They're going bananas on Franklin Street.
Pass to Britt, 15 seconds to play. Up high to Page, gets a screen from Meeks. Page driving in on the left, high off the glass for two. Louisville with 7 seconds. Jones has it, goes left corner, Black's here for three. Back iron, 1 second to play, stick up, no! Carolina wins it! The Tar Heels win it! 72-71. 6 seconds to go. Pinson comes front court. Pinson to May for the win. Got it! Luke May! He got it! 0.3 of a second! Luke May gives Carolina the 75-73 lead. Are you kidding me?
Inside 30 overall. Love, top of the key. Oh! Big time delivery.
Here are your hosts, Josh Marlowe and Anthony Pagnotta.
Hello and welcome into another live edition of the Four Corners podcast. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services. Josh and Anthony here with you guys on a Thursday night. We're almost a day removed since Carolina's final preseason exhibition, which took place last night in the Smith Center, a 95-53 win over Winston-Salem State. And we're here to talk about that game, kind of give you the normal rundown of what we do when the games matter, when we do our full-blown game recaps. So what that entails is we'll take a look at the box score, we'll deliver the quote of the game, we'll give our stat of the game, thoughts and takeaways, so on and so forth during tonight's edition of the show. So let's go ahead and get right to it. As I mentioned, Carolina final preseason exhibition game last night. They secured a 95-53 win over the Division II Rams in Chapel Hill. It was a game that Carolina, started the game on a 15-2 run and then basically sleptwalked their way through the remainder of the first half, built a 39-26 lead, but they played much better in the second half, much more efficient on the offensive end, shot the ball the best that we've seen them shoot it so far here in their two exhibition matchups, and that allowed them to pull away for the comfortable 42-point win. They were led by freshman sensation Caleb Wilson, who recorded another unofficial double-double. This time it was 23 points. It was 10 rebounds as he was one of 4 Carolina players to reach double-figure scoring on a night where they shoot 50% from the field, 38% from three, and were dominant on both the glass, but most importantly, the defensive glass in totality. Luka Bogovac did not play. That was something that I think we expected as we got closer and closer until tip, and it's looking more and more like there's a really good chance he will miss the beginning of the season as he waits to be admitted or really cleared by the university to play basketball at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. But that's not what we're going to talk about tonight. We'll talk about the game last night, which Carolina wasn't pretty. It wasn't the most complete performance that we've seen from them in an exhibition setting, but it was, I think, another step in the right direction for a team that we've talked about kind of all preseason long. They give the feeling and the vibe of a group that will get better as the season moves along. And I think we saw improvement from BYU to Winston-Salem State last night, albeit there being a noticeable drop-off in the level of competition.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is that you can't look at this game and all of a sudden feel great about the season and say, oh, now Carolina's really flexing their muscle. They're showing you that they are going to be one of the better teams in the ACC because you took on a Division II opponent. But you still saw everything that you needed to see as the night went along. It wasn't the most positive start. I mean, there were some people that were panicking just a little bit after, a slow first half where they shot 41% from the field. They were 3 of 12 from beyond the arc. And, really that was cleaned up by Caleb Wilson at the end of the half with a couple of baskets that gave Carolina a little bit of a bigger lead. But, the thing is that you needed a half like you saw in the second half from this group to really feel comfortable about where they were going into the opener. You got it. You got a much more efficient half. And I think the fact that they showed you that should have you feeling confident that this team is going to be all right on the offensive end of the floor, at least for now. That's the thing, is that you want to see that they are going to be good enough to where when they come out against Central Arkansas, they're going to be able to put together a strong enough performance where you feel confident in this group. How it's going to look against Kansas, it will be interesting. I think that's one of the things that, is going to be challenging for Carolina, is that within the first week of the season, you're taking on another team ranked inside the top 25 to begin the season. But Kansas isn't exactly as good as they've been in years past. I don't think they're as good as that BYU team that you faced in the exhibition. So I still think Carolina is going to be able to score the ball. We saw it the other night. Their half-court offense didn't look great against BYU, and they were still able to score it. So I do think there are some things that they, of course, have to clean up. But for the most part, you leave this exhibition feeling pretty good about where Carolina is at.
Hubert, and this isn't the quote of the game, so I'll reference it now. He opened his post-game press conference talking about he thought there was a lack of energy, attention to detail, so on and so forth. I kind of disagree with that. Carolina ran out to a 15-2 lead. So it wasn't like I got the feeling as someone that was in the arena, I thought they were ready to play. I'm also not the head coach, so he's going to grade them a lot differently. But that should have been expected. You went from playing a game on the road in a neutral floor against a preseason top 10 team, against the number one freshman in college basketball, to a Division II school in an arena that maybe had a third of the capacity it holds on hand. It wasn't the most lively crowd we've ever seen last night for an exhibition contest. And so some of that I think was kind of expected for a group that's got 11 newcomers and they're learning how to play with one another. But like I said, the game to me was never in doubt. Even when it was a 5-point game in this 5 minutes ago in the first. I mean, Carolina was playing lineups that maybe if Luka Bogovac does miss time, they'll be forced to play. But I thought there was a lot of tinkering going on because Carolina just had such a stranglehold on the game where the result was never going to be in jeopardy. And Hubert Davis was trying a lot of different things. And you look at the end of the night and you win the game by 42. And you did a lot of things really, really well. And that's what we're going to sit here over the next 30, 35 minutes or so and talk about. So with that, we'll go ahead and turn our attention to the box score. And we'll take a look at the box score, which is brought to you by Legacy Arcade. And Legacy Arcade and Social Casino are where you can win cash prizes playing roulette, blackjack, your favorite slot games, and multiplayer fish games. You can also win cash prizes playing your favorite arcade games as well. If you scan the QR code that's up there on the screen and use the promo code HEELS, what that will earn you is $100 in free money upon registering your account through Legacy Arcade. Some of the benefits of playing with Legacy Arcade: it's safe, secure, with 24-hour customer support. There's instant redemption immediately to the bank account or the credit card that you have on file. And speaking of credit cards, they accept all major credit cards, Skrill and ACH, with Apple Pay coming to Legacy Arcade here in the near future. So let's go ahead and take a deep dive through that box score. As I mentioned, Carolina shot 50% from the field. They were 33 of 66. They held the Rams to 28% shooting. They were 20 of 71. Carolina cleaned up his three-point shooting in the second half to shoot a very good 38%. They were 12 of 32 from deep. Winston-Salem State was also 38%, but they were just 6 of 16. The free throw line, an area where Carolina definitely left some points, just 17 of 25 from the charity stripe. That works out to just 68% shooting. On the other side, though, Winston-Salem just 7 of 9 from the foul line. That's a much more efficient 78%. Carolina limited the turnovers after committing a bunch of them against BYU. Just 10 turnovers last night led to 10 points for the Rams, but they forced 11 turnovers and scored 16 points off of them. I mentioned in the open, Carolina dominant on the glass, 51 to 31 total rebounds. Defensive rebounds, it was 35 to 19 in favor of Carolina. Offensive rebounds, 16 to 12 in favor of Carolina. Second chance points, 21 to 15 in favor of Carolina. A few more stats from the box score. Carolina had an advantage, 21 to 15 in second chance points, 35 to 29 in points off the bench, 38 to 16 in points in the paint, 12 to 4 with fast break points, 7 to 3 the advantage in blocks. They did get outstolen 9 to 8 by Winston-Salem State. And for the night, Carolina had 15 assists on 33 made baskets. The Rams just 8 assists on their 20 made baskets. And Carolina led for 39 minutes and 25 seconds of last night's exhibition. We'll transition now to the quote of the game. No audio of Hubert Davis. I have to read the quote to you from his time with the media last night. And Hubert Davis said, quote, "I don't know if we were nervous or if it's the first time this group has been at home and played on our own floor, but just the lack of energy, effort, and attention to detail wasn't there in the first half. And that was the exact opposite in the second half. And I think that's why we played so well in the second half. The energy picked up, effort specifically on the defensive end, finishing. I thought we were more disciplined defensively in the second half. We finished possessions with a rebound, and that allowed us to get out in transition," end quote. So I lied. I thought I picked out a different quote, but I did not. The quote I picked out was Schubert talking about the lack of energy and attention to detail that he felt like his team played with in the first half as compared to the second half. And, the box score would suggest that. Carolina outscored Winston-Salem State 56 to 27 in the second half. They shot the ball much better from the perimeter in the second half as well. But I never got that vibe. I never felt like Carolina wasn't playing hard. I felt like the energy was there. They full court pressed in the first half, and I thought they executed that very, very well. But what I think this shows you is I think Hubert Davis has the pulse of this team, and I think he knows that he can be a lot more visibly frustrated with them and outwardly frustrated with them, and they'll respond to it. And guess what? That gives you vibes from 2 years ago where he knew he had the pulse of that group. And he knew that group was going to respond. And so that's what they did last night. I think it's a really good sign that Hubert feels comfortable in a half where Carolina is still led by double digits, still controlled the game. He wasn't happy with the way his team played, and he could voice that to this year's group.
Yeah, that's the thing that I took away from it too, is that this is a group that can handle being criticized, maybe in a way that last year's group wasn't necessarily capable of handling. Last year we talked about it so many times about the confidence level of that team just didn't seem to be there. With this team, I think you've got guys that exude confidence in Caleb Wilson, in Henry Vasar. I think those are the guys that are going to be leaders on this team. And so for them, yeah, they're guys that need to be challenged when things aren't going well. You look at the first half. I mean, Caleb Wilson was amazing in that first half. I mean, he had 17 points on 7 of 10 shooting, 6 rebounds. It really just felt like everybody else was a little bit flat in terms of the offensive end of the floor. I thought defensively, they were locked in from the word go. I thought they did a really good job defensively. I mean, yeah, were there a couple of moments there where guys were able to find themselves open in that first half? Yeah, I mean, as the half went along, to start the game, you talked about it. Carolina started the game up 15-2, and a lot of that was due to the way they were playing on the defensive end of the floor. I mean, they forced 10 turnovers in the first half. So this was a team that was bought in on that end of the floor. I just thought shots weren't falling, and some of the looks weren't exactly the greatest looks from Carolina in that first half. I thought the second half, you saw one thing that really stuck out to me was that you look at the second half, right out of the gate, it set Trimble immediately more aggressive. Where in the first half, only 1 of 3 from the field. Now, in the second half, you might say, well, he was only 2 of 3 in the second half. Well, remember, he only played 6 minutes in the second half. But you saw as he came out of the gate, that was a guy that needed to step up. He was one of the ones that Hubert Davis was probably challenging in the locker room, and he immediately does, finishes the night with 10 points, and was part of the reason why Carolina was able to pull away, because he started attacking the rim. So I really liked that element of this team being able to respond. I knew that this was, something that was happening. I knew that Hubert was probably getting on him in that halftime locker room, because I said to you when it took them a while to come out of the halftime locker room, I said, man, this is a little long, especially for an exhibition, for them to come out of the locker room. But he was fired up. He got, what he needed to out of them. And I think this performance ends up being where we were expecting it to be. I know, we went with your family to the game. So Ashton was along with us. He was a little more critical of the performance early on in the game than we were. But I do think in the second half, everybody that was, worried about this team, they got exactly what they needed to, because the head coach was demanding so much from them and got on them at halftime.
All right, let's get to the stat of the game so that we can really start breaking this game down and really, I guess, addressing some of there are some positives that I definitely want to spend some time on, but I guess the quote-unquote negatives, if you will. So the stat of the game, I went with rebounding, and I broke it down like this. Carolina had 35 defensive rebounds, and Winston-Salem State they had 31 total rebounds. So I think it just really shows you the rebounding ability that this group has. Now, granted, this is a Division II school, so how much is this going to happen, starting Monday night against Central Arkansas? I don't know, but it's there. Like there's potential with how just freaking big Carolina is and how long they are. They can overwhelm teams on the glass. That gives you an old school Roy Williams vibe, something that gets me really excited. So that's the stat of the game. I went with the rebounding, 35 defensive rebounds for Carolina, just 31 total rebounds for Winston-Salem State. So let's go ahead and get into the thoughts and takeaways from the game last night. I'll piggyback and we'll start with Caleb Wilson. I was just very excited to see how did he follow up what he did against AJ DeBanza, because this is a kid that I think it's fair to say there's no questioning if he's going to compete when Carolina's on the floor, because if there was one person that competed every possession last night, it was Caleb Wilson. I thought he was utterly sensational. I thought he was fantastic. 23 points, 10 rebounds, did so in just 23 minutes, was 9 of 13 from the floor. So, you were the one that was challenging him to be more efficient. He's more efficient last night. Is perfect from the foul line, goes 5 of 5 from the charity stripe. I thought the biggest impact he made outside of scoring, and this is what I think has got me the most excited about this group, his ability to impact entry or inbound passes is ridiculous. And it was very odd, I thought. No full court press, nothing from Carolina against BYU, but they full court pressed their rear ends off last night. And Hubert Davis puts him on the inbounder, and he just makes such a difference. And he forced so many balls to go into the corner where he can then go and trap. And all of a sudden, even if they're getting the ball out of their hands, you look up at the shot clock and there's already 21, 22 seconds when they're getting the ball across the timeline. And now they're 8 seconds behind trying to get into their set. And now you don't have to defend for 30 seconds and you're speeding the opponent up. And that's when Carolina can really get going, is when they make the opponents rush a shot, you grab a miss, and you just run it down the floor for a layup, a dunk, a transition three, a foul, so on and so forth. You see the posterized dunk where he did as much visible trash talking as I think I've seen in quite some time. I don't know what he said. I would love to know what he said, but he's got an attitude about him too, man. Like there's a dog inside of him. He got disrespected earlier in the week, he felt like, by the field of 68 and their ranking of the top 10 freshmen in, I think, the ACC and their top 10 freshmen in all of college basketball. And it was like he was kind of giving everyone a big middle finger last night with the way that he was competing and the way that he was just battling against guys that did not have a chance in crap to hold their own against him. And so, we've tried to be cautious about getting excited about a freshman because we've seen really hyped up freshmen take some time to be difference makers for Carolina. With Luka Bogovac not playing, it's clearly evident that he's got to take on a bigger role. He's accepted that role, and I think this guy is ready to go. And I think when he gets to lace it up for real on Monday night against Central Arkansas, he'll be ready to send another message that what we've seen so far here in the preseason is not a fluke.
And it doesn't matter where you put him on the floor. I mean, no matter what position you're playing him in, whether it's that 3 spot or that 4 spot, he is very successful and he can do everything that you need to be able to do at those positions. And I said it last night, one of the things that I think really sticks out about him is that he provides so much defensive versatility. I mean, this is a guy that can legitimately guard anywhere from the 1 to the 5 if you needed to. And that ability to, if he gets switched on to somebody and still be incredibly effective is amazing. And you may be saying, well, as a 5-man, how would he match up against somebody that's 7 foot? I mean, yeah, he's 6'10", and he's every bit of it. You saw the length last night. I mean, you talked about it. He and Vasar both were affecting inbounds passes. It was almost impossible at times for Winston-Salem State to get the ball inbounds. I mean, it took them 4 or 5 seconds every single time that they were inbounding to get the ball in because these guys are just that long. That's something that last year you did not have. That did not exist on your roster. You had a couple of guys that had even a little bit of length, and even those guys, they weren't strong enough rebounders. Like you're seeing from Caleb Wilson. I mean, you see it on both ends of the floor. 4 offensive rebounds to lead the team, 6 defensive rebounds, tied for the lead on the team. That's what you're looking for from him, is that, when he's active on the glass. And I that's one thing that honestly caught me a little off guard. I did not know what he was going to be as a rebounder, especially a guy that was playing that 3 spot in the starting lineup. I thought, okay, well, it may take a little bit of time to learn what exactly he does, rebounding wise. He's the best rebounder on this team. And I think you've seen how impactful that's been for Carolina when he's able to get the ball, run down the court. He's a guy that's going to be able to get things started in transition. And then when it comes to scoring the ball, we talked about the half court and who's going to be a guy that steps up for Carolina and scores in that area. I think one guy that we look to is, of course, Seth Trimble, putting some pressure on the rim. I think that ability is there. But in terms of just needing a guy to make a shot, I think Caleb Wilson is already that guy. And that's what's special about him, man. You're right. We have gotten to a point at Carolina, and it sucks, but we've gotten to a point where when it comes to the 5 stars, we are a little hesitant to get too excited about these guys because we say, well, look at the examples of guys in recent years. It hasn't necessarily worked out. This is a guy you should be legitimately excited about because his competitive nature, he's never going to turn it off. Like, this is a guy that every time that he's out on the floor, no matter who you're playing, and Carolina's going to need that intensity early in the season because they're not playing the type of non-conference schedule that they usually play. When you go through that stretch where you're playing Navy, East Carolina, that stretch, yeah, you're going to need a guy that's wanting to compete every single night, that's wanting to show out every single night. And you've got that here in Caleb Wilson. Last night looked like another game for him. It looked like you were playing a power, conference opponent, very similar opponent to BYU in terms of the intensity that he was bringing to the floor. So I love that about him. I think that he's going to be a really successful player for Carolina. And last night was just another example of why that's going to be the case.
Yeah, he's a different player than Harrison Ingram, just in the style of which that he plays. but he gives that same vibe. Harris Ingram, it didn't matter who Carolina played, where Carolina played. He showed up and he fought his tail off and he competed. It's only 2 games, but Caleb Wilson seems to be a guy that doesn't matter who, where, what, when, why, how. He's going to put that uniform on and he's going to play hard and he's going to compete. And when your best player is doing that, that sets the tone for the other guys to follow suit. And it's why he's emerging not only as the primary focal point, he's also emerging as the leader of this team as well. Let's talk about another guy that I think, really continues to shine in a big way. And we talked about him so much this summer as maybe being the ultimate X factor for Carolina. And that's Jiren Stevenson. And I wrote about it in the article. You can check that out at heeltoughblog.com. And when I talked about Jiren Stevenson, I just wrote down that he has found a home in Chapel Hill, which makes a lot of sense considering the fact he's a Chapel Hill native. But last night, 11 points, 4 of 5 from the field, 2 of 3 from 3, grabbed 6 rebounds in 21 minutes. I mean, he's obviously not going to shoot the ball that effectively every single night. But if he can do what he did against BYU and what he did last night on a very consistent basis for Carolina, whether he's having to do so right now as a starter or when he's coming, or hopefully he's coming off the bench because we get Luka cleared and available to play, it's really going to make a world of difference for Carolina, mainly because if he goes to the bench, it just gives Carolina just a little bit more depth than they have right now, and that'll pay dividends come ACC play. The thing I talked about all summer long with him was, could Hubert Davis cultivate and find a role for Jiren Stevenson to know this is what I'm being asked to do every single night? And it feels like the early return is that's been found. That message has been delivered. I felt like at Alabama, as someone that watches as much college basketball as I watch, it felt like his role was always herky-jerky. It was one time they wanted him to stand in the corner and shoot threes. But then if they had a different matchup, well, go inside and try to play inside out. You're asking a lot for a young player just to play a different role every single night. Define a role. Tell them this is what I am expecting you to do, these 2 or 3 things. And if you do those, you'll benefit and the team will benefit. And I think he's doing that. He's not hunting his offense. It feels like every time he shoots the ball, though, it's within the rhythm. It's within the flow. And then what he's doing defensively just cannot be understated. I think his ability to switch a lot of different screens makes Carolina so versatile on that end of the floor. He also just competes, man. Like he's going to fight through a screen. He's going to make sure that communication is there so Carolina can switch a screen more comfortably. It's just all those little things that, quite simply, you can't coach. You can't teach it. Either a guy has it or he doesn't have it. And I just think that now that he's back home, quite literally, he knows what his role is. He knows what this coaching staff is asking of him. You're seeing him play more to the level that we thought he was going to be like when Alabama, and we were all pissed off that Hubert Davis let a Chapel Hill native get out of his backyard and go away to the SEC in a program like the Crimson Tide.
Yeah, it feels like this is the perfect time, though, for him to join Carolina because he, as you said, his role is more defined, and I think he's growing as a player, where when he came in here, if he came in here as a freshman, he probably would have been one of these other highly rated freshmen that would have came in here and struggled a little bit, and maybe it doesn't work out and he ends up going somewhere else. I think that his time at Alabama really showed him that, look, there is a skill set that you have, which is being able to stretch the floor, but there's more to your game. You're a guy that has size for a reason, and you've got to be able to utilize it. I mean, in this game, he gets 6 rebounds, comes off of a performance against BYU where he only had 1 rebound. I thought he responded in this game. I thought he looked really good on the glass, looked like a typical 4 for Carolina, what we're used to seeing, a guy that can rebound really well, and then a guy that can protect the rim. I mean, he had 2 blocks in this game. I think that's something that, we haven't really talked about a whole lot with him, but you look back at the scrimmages, and this was something that he was also doing in the scrimmages that didn't necessarily translate over to BYU. BYU, the scoring translated over. You just didn't see the things on the defensive end that would show you that he was improving. Wasn't bad defensively, but he wasn't showing you some of those stats that you need to see that show you, see, this is where the improvement really is coming. I think you're seeing that right now. I think he likes the new role that he is in. And I think, when you look at him offensively, he was able to stretch the floor again last night. Knocks down 2 shots from the outside. That's something that we think is really special about his game and is going to make him a little bit of a matchup nightmare for these guys, because he's just going to be able to shoot over guys if you're going to be able to play like that on the perimeter. The other thing that I like is we saw, one basket where he just puts the ball on the floor, steamrolls a guy inside and finishes. And I think that's what's really amazing about him. He doesn't look awkward putting the ball on the floor. He looks like he's got some driving ability to the basket. And that's one of the things that we're going to want him to do a little bit more here is, hey, you got the length, you've got the athleticism, attack the basket, get some of those easy shots on the inside. I'd like to see him be a little bit better free throw wise. I mean, he was only 1 of 3, and being as good of a shooter as he is, you would like to see him knock down those free throws. I think he will, though, and I think he'll be perfectly fine. I loved the production that we got from him last night. He just looked like a starting caliber player. Like, the fact that he only finished with 11 points is honestly shocking, because I felt like he played so much better than that. I felt like offensively, he scored the ball about as well as anybody outside of Caleb Wilson. And the stats back that up, but you would have thought it was an even bigger night for him. So, I mean, a hat tip to him. He's a guy that was put in a situation where, I think he probably wanted to be a starter coming in here. But, when they brought in Luka, I think it was known this is a guy that's going to be coming off the bench. Now, with Luka not being cleared and we're getting towards that start of the season, they put him in these exhibitions and said, look, man, we're going to need you to play starter-like minutes. We're going to be counting on you to be as productive as a starter, and he's brought that in the first 2 exhibitions.
Yeah, our guy Greg Ward comments on the Facebook stream, Jiren looks confident and smooth. He most certainly does, and that's a real beneficiary right now. With just the so much uncertainty around Luka Bogovac and will he be ready to go for Carolina when they take the court on Monday night? The fact that he has settled in, is ready, I think, to go and be a nightly contributor for Carolina is a real positive for Hubert Davis right now and this coaching staff. I'll read another comment from Greg to set up the next takeaway. He said, guys, I absolutely love the perimeter ball movement this year. The ball isn't sticking, and I think that's a big thing. There's a big reason why Carolina shot the ball so much better in this game compared to BYU. They shoot 50% from the field. They get up to 38% from 3. They were 12 of 32 with a 9 of 20 mark going there in the second half. That was one of the things that was most evident when we were at the blue-white game. And you could say it's a scrimmage, but Carolina they were competing. They were playing against one another. And we're trying to execute. And, as great as RJ Davis was for Carolina, and I don't want to diminish his greatness, there was a lot of time that he just created offense on his own, and he dribbled the ball and dribbled the ball. Same thing for Caleb Love. Same thing for Elliot Cadeau. But it made Carolina easy to defend in the half court. Carolina got stagnant so many times, it felt like, in crucial games because there was no one else to move the ball to. That's not going to happen this year. First off, that high-low game, because Carolina's got good passing big men. Caleb Wilson, good entry passer. Henry Visar can make a good pass. Zayden High made a couple of beautiful passes as well at the top of the key. That's going to be one thing the team's got to be prepared for, because the ball is going to go inside out. But the way the ball moved, I thought, was why Carolina just shot it so much better in the second half. And it was Jaden Young and it was, Jonathan Powell that were the guys making those perimeter shots. Jaden Young hit, was 3 of 6 from 3. And I believe he had 3 threes like in a 4-possession span where he just got hot, and you saw why I've been really high on him as an addition. You see why Carolina brought him in when he was in the portal leaving Virginia Tech. And then you saw Jonathan Powell last night, a lot more aggressive, a lot more assertive, seeking his offense and seeking to get the ball where he wants it so he can get off the shots that he wants to get off. because he's got such a quick trigger. It's hard to guard him as it is. But it starts and ends with what the ball does, because the ball creates energy. And I firmly believe the ball will go in the basket if the ball feels like it deserves to go in the basket. Meaning that if you move the ball, if you move the defense, if you make them rotate, you make them chase, you're going to make shots more often than not. But if you're just sitting there and you're just passing the ball back and forth playing hot potato and you shoot a contested 25-footer, no, you're not going to make that shot more often than not. Carolina looks crisp in the half court. There's still a ways to go because they don't have Luka Bogovac right now, who's their best half court one-on-one player in terms of just creating his own offense. But if they move the ball the way they moved it at times last night, and that's a part of the identity of this group, they've got the shooters, man, to shoot the ball well from the outside on a consistent basis. That's why I didn't panic over what I saw against BYU. I didn't think, that was a clear image of what this team is going to be. Also helped that BYU shot the ball pretty poorly that night as well. They look a lot more cohesive in the half court. They're running a lot more sets in the half court. And you can do that when the ball moves, the ball doesn't stick, and they're getting shots that they quite simply did not get a year ago. You add better shooters to the roster. All that sets up the potential for Carolina to be as explosive as they've been from behind the three-point line since they made the national championship game in Hubert Davis's first year.
Yeah, I mean, it's to go back to the original point of the ball movement and how successful that it's been. I think that was one of the things that we were begging these teams the last couple of years to be able to do. And you're right. I just don't think that was the way that some of these guys play. We said it, a couple of times. I don't know if we said it on here, but we definitely said it to each other. RJ had an NBA game. It's just he wasn't an NBA player because of his size. It was a very isolation type of game. He was looking for screens to free him up. He was just looking to create a little bit of open space, and that was how he was going to knock shots down. This crew, it doesn't look like that's necessarily how they play. They want to move the ball. You've got a guy in Kyan Evans that I think shares the ball at a really high rate in terms of wanting to get it out of his hands when he gets across half court. The other guys I think that are on the floor, they want to move to get the best look. It's not, hey, we're trying to free ourselves up immediately. Once we get the ball in our hands, we're figuring out how exactly we have to score the basketball. It's we're looking and seeing it. What are our options? Can we find a better pass? Where I felt like in the past couple of years, that wasn't necessarily what they were doing. You talked about, we last year, there were multiple times. You go back to that Duke game in the Smith Center, Carolina literally dribbling the ball into the floor. Just nonstop. It's one guy that takes control of it, holds it for, 15 seconds trying to free himself up and then gets a tough look and it doesn't end up going down. This group, you don't feel like that. Do I think that they need to shoot the ball a little bit better than, they did in the first three halves of exhibition basketball? Yeah. I think that certainly is fair to say. They didn't shoot it great against BYU. They didn't shoot it great in that first half last night against Winston-Salem State. But do they have guys that are capable of doing that? I think yes. I think even without Luka out there, I do think there are guys that are capable of doing that. And, I thought there were some guys last night that really in the second half sort of surprised me. First half we saw Jaden Young. I thought he took some questionable shots in the first half. He had a couple of looks that I thought he also should have made, and he just doesn't knock him down. And it had me wondering, okay, how impactful really is he going to be this year? Because, we're in an exhibition. We're still trying to figure out what exactly the rotations will look like. The second half, you saw what Carolina saw. You saw why he was a guy that Carolina wanted to get out of the portal. So I really liked what I saw from him. I think there's some shooting touch from Jonathan Powell as well. That, will come along as the season comes along. He's a guy that I think once his role becomes more defined to him, once he knows exactly what he's going to be doing to start the season, where I think, he went from being a guy that was probably not going to see a ton of minutes for Carolina. With Luka Bogovac, if he was able to play, now he's going to see more minutes and he's going to be counted on to be a guy that can knock down shots from the perimeter. I thought last night he looked a lot better, and I think he is more than capable of doing that. The big guy that I think you question is Kyan Evans. That's the guy that everybody, I think, leaving last night was questioning. But the thing that I will say about him is you look at the way that he played last night. He was only 2 of 6 from the field. He's not a guy that's hunting out shots. That's certainly not something that's new to Carolina because Elliot Cadeau didn't hunt out shots either. But he's not afraid to take shots. And you saw that in the second half last night. He knocks down 2 threes. I think both of those came in the second half, if I'm not mistaken. No, one in each half. So, but still, I thought, when he is needed, he has the ability to knock down shots. And that's what's most important for Carolina. So I think in totality, this half-court offense, still one of the things that I think we're still leaving this exhibition. I said it to you last night when we were walking out. Still not feeling 100% confident in this half-court offense. I still think there are areas where they could be better, but I do believe that this team is trending in the right direction, and it feels like they are starting to, guys are starting to realize, hey, we don't have Luke out here. We're going to have to step up in these half-court situations because we know we're good in the fast break. We know we've got, these superb athletes. We got guys that are going to attack the rim. Now it's about, can you get guys in the half court when teams are matching up against you, are able to play some good defense, good man-to-man defense? Are you going to be able to knock down shots? And I think last night you saw it in the second half that they feel like they're going to be capable of doing that.
All right, we'll get to the Kyan Evans part of tonight's episode because I think it's the most important thing we have to talk about. And that's going to be the center of tonight's discussion topic because, the takes are out there.
They're piping hot.
I heard it this morning on the show that I produce. I got it on the tweet that I sent out. Follow me at HTB_Josh, where I put and I believe this. Kyan Evans is a work in progress, and that's okay. And look, as someone that bought in, that really sold the ceiling high, I'm not walking back from what I believe he can be for Carolina because I still believe he can be that player. The guy that you saw that was helping Colorado State get to the brink of the Sweet 16 is going to be a guy we see in Carolina blue at some point. But he is going through the normal growing pains you see a Carolina point guard go through. I think because he's a junior that's in from the portal, and he's played in the NCAA tournament, we just thought, it wasn't going to be as apparent as a freshman or, whatever it is. But it is because there's not a program in the country that demands more from its point guard than Carolina. And that dates back to Dean Smith, to Roy Williams, and now to Hubert Davis. So he is going through a growing process. And, he's got to become more comfortable on offense. I do think he individually is the one that hurts the most by not having Luka on the floor with him, because I think if he had Luka on the floor, there would be driving lanes that he could get to the basket a lot more freely, a lot more openly. And I think he wants to be a guy that scores inside out as opposed to outside in. But the biggest thing that I took away from last night is if he's going to defend the way that he's defended, I will live with his growing pains offensively. And I'll be okay with that because he's the best defensive guard Carolina's had since Marcus Page. From what I've seen through 2 games. Like RJ Davis, because of his size, I thought competed really well. But because of his size, teams could rise above and shoot over him. Same thing with Elliot Cadeau. I never thought Caleb Love bought into being a great defender. You never got to see Cole Anthony here long enough. Kobe White was so worried about being an offensive scorer that I think Roy Williams was okay with him not being a great defender. Joel Berry was adequate, but could have been better. Marcus Page was a great two-way guard. He was great offensively, but also could be an impactful defender for Carolina. And I'm not saying that Kyan Evans is going to be Marcus Page. If he wants to to be my guess. But if he's still going to defend the way that he defends, then I think Carolina can live with the lack of scoring production they're getting from him right now. Well, maybe I'm proven wrong. And if so, we'll find out probably pretty quickly because, you play Kansas the first week of the season. You get Michigan State the week of Thanksgiving. You go to Kentucky the week after that. And if he's not scoring and Carolina's getting blasted, then we'll have to say that we need to get more production from him. But I think I'm okay watching and seeing him learn on the fly and grow on the job. One, because he's got a better supporting cast around him than what R.J. Davis had a year ago, and also Derek Dixon's done a bunch of nice things off the bench as well. So Carolina can kind of stagger those minutes because I think there's a lot more confidence in Derek Dixon right now than maybe we thought going into the season. So where do you land on the Kai Evans discussion? Because as you mentioned, man, the takes are piping hot. They're piping hot in a good way for some people. They're piping hot in a bad way for some others. Are you more in my camp, or are you maybe on the other side where you think Carolina needs more production from the transfer point guard?
I'm probably in the middle. I mean, I think that he probably want a little bit more production from the spot. I mean, the fact that you're getting 6 points, I mean, that was basically the type of production that you were getting out of Elliot Cadeau from that spot. And I mean, against BYU, the thing is like, he doesn't look terrible out there. That's the thing that is just crazy to me when I see some of the takes, is you would think that this is a guy that's turning the ball over at a ridiculous rate. That's throwing up shots at a crazy rate and nothing's going down. It's a guy that seems to have awareness as to where he is at in terms of his progression on the offensive end of the floor. And so I think it's going to take time for him to really be a contributor there. Remember that it took time for him to be a contributor scoring-wise for Colorado State last year. The second half of the year was really where he got going. And my thing is to people that want to see a full season of production from him. Well, you're telling me if you get a half-year production from him, very similar to what you got at Colorado State, that you're going to be against that? The other thing is he might not need to be that guy here. If you're going to get what you're getting from Caleb Wilson, if you're going to get what you got the other night against BYU from Seth Trimble, where I think, he probably is going to be more of that guy than what you saw last night. He's going to know that he has to be more aggressive on the offensive end. If you're going to be able to get, consistent double-digit points from Henry Vasar, I mean, do you necessarily need Kai Evans to be a guy that's scoring the ball at the rate that he was at a Colorado State? I don't know. Colorado State, he was the second option. It was Nick Clifford and it was him. Those were the two guys that were carrying them offensively. He doesn't necessarily have to be that guy. And again, you look at last night, just 2 assists. I think people will probably say, oh, well, we should see that number a little bit higher. I think that number will normally be a little bit higher. It was against BYU. I think he's going to be fine there. 1 turnover is very efficient. That's what's different from the last couple of years with Elliot Cadeau. Even though he might not be bringing you the type of production that you thought he was going to bring scoring-wise, he's not turning the ball over. There aren't these catastrophic mistakes that are hurting Carolina. And, in the first half, I mean, Carolina turned the ball over 7 times, and we were a little bit frustrated. It wasn't his fault, though. So I think you're okay with what you're getting on the offensive end of the floor for now. Yeah, if you find out as you go throughout the season, hey, we kind of need someone as that third scoring option. We need someone, maybe, hopefully not, but need someone as that second scoring option for Carolina, especially if it's going to take Lucas some time to get cleared. Then yeah, we can get to that conversation. But right now, I think you've got the scorers that you need. You got guys scoring the basketball. You just need someone at that point guard spot that's efficient with the ball and isn't turning it over. That's what he's giving you. Defensively, I like what I'm seeing from him. I'm not as strong as you are in saying that he's the best defensive guard that we've seen since, best defensive point guard that we've seen since Marcus Page. I think it's still early. I think we'll have to see as we ease into things. I thought he was decent against Rob Wright. I also thought Rob Wright missed some shots in that game for BYU. So I'll be interested to see when he gets challenged with another big name point guard, which we'll see when he takes on Kansas. How does he sort of react to that? Is he a guy that's really showing out on the defensive end of the floor? But I think one thing that's there that you can't question is the defensive effort. That is there for this kid. And so to me, it's hard not to root for him and to think that if, with a little bit of time, he has a chance to be a good player. I think the problem that a lot of Carolina fans are going to have is that they thought we were going big fish hunting. You were getting one of the best point guards and a guy that was going to score it at just a ridiculous rate from that point guard spot. I don't think that's what Carolina necessarily needed. They just needed somebody that can control the game a little bit better than what we saw from Elliot Cadeau and can defend at a little bit of a higher level. And I think right now you can check both of those boxes. Is it an emphatic check mark? Is it, hey man, you've got yourself a potential star in the making here? No, I don't think we're at that point with Kyan Evans, but I do think that we're getting serviceable enough play where Carolina will be able to succeed. Like, to me, I don't look at him and say he's the reason that we won't be able to go and beat Kansas. I don't look at that. Where last year, yeah, there were times where you would say, hey, Elliot Cadeau is the reason I don't think you can beat insert ranked team here.
Yeah, no, that's very fair. I'm going to be very defensive of him because I don't think anyone hyped him up more than I did this offseason. I maybe be the reason why fans are freaking out because they may have heard some short, fat, bald guy talk about him being an all ACC caliber point guard, All-American maybe as well. I may backtrack on being an All-American. He could be an all ACC caliber guard, though. I still do believe in that. I want to touch on just one more comment that we got from the Facebook stream, then we'll get out of this edition of the show. So we'll start with Greg Ward, who commented, Zayden High looked more comfortable, but we need him as reliable backup for the season. He has enough talent. Does he have it in his head, high motor, but he has to control it? And then that was followed up by our guy, Kenny Turner, who said, I hope I'm wrong, but Zayden won't help this year. I think what's important for Kenny is, what are you determining him as help? Is he going to score, 6-7 points off the bench on a nightly basis? No. Is he going to grab 6-7 rebounds on a nightly basis? No. But can he come in there and defend and compete at a high level without fouling? Can he make those passes as a high-low big man that, he can get the ball to the front of the rim to Visar or whoever's playing down low? Can he do that? And when the time is right, can he take that 3 or 2 that the defense is giving him? Can he make those shots? I think all that is on the table for him. Also, this is why getting Luka is so important, because once you move Jiren Stevenson to the bench, Carolina granted, yes, you're technically adding another player, but they feel night and day, I think, deeper than where they are right now. That's just the reality of the situation. Because if you're confident in what you're getting from Jiren Stevenson as a starter, but all of a sudden that's coming off the bench, well, then you're not asking as much from Zayden High. You're not asking as much from James Brown. But if Luka's going to miss an extended period of time and this is still all up in the air, then yes, we're going to need Zayden to be more productive than what we maybe seen against BYU and what we saw last night. We're going to need to see James Brown be a different playmaker, be a difference maker than what we've seen so far through the first 2 exhibitions. So I believe in Zayden's ability. I do think he has learned to control the way he plays a little bit. It's still going to be a work in progress for a guy that missed an entire year of college basketball, albeit at his own wrongdoing. But, Kenny, I would not be out on Zayden High. There's a lot of talent there. That's probably a big reason why Hubert Davis brought him back, is because he wanted that potential on his roster. And I think you'll see it as the season does unfold that he'll be a quality member of Carolina's bench and a guy that does impact winning maybe in a bigger way than you're sitting here thinking he'll do right now. with that, folks, it is going to wrap up this edition of the podcast. In the meantime, we will direct you guys to the website. That's HeelToughBlog.com, where I had you covered with the preview of the game last night. The recap's up on the website for you guys as well. Got that up for you this morning after getting back home last night around 12:30 or so. And the next time we'll be writing an article, it'll be the first preview of the season for a game that counts against Central Arkansas. So be on the lookout for that, as you know, we're in full-blown basketball mode. And I'll have you covered with all the news and notes regarding that program. Anthony has you covered with Carolina football. They're in action tomorrow night, 7:30 kick against Syracuse. Preview of the game will be up. Recap of the game will be up as well, as Carolina looks to get their first win against power conference competition. Simply put, guys, we encourage you to visit the website, HeelToughBlog.com, every single day for the latest and best coverage of Carolina basketball and Tar Heel football. As for the podcast, you guys know where to find us. Every major podcasting platform. Simply search the Four Corners Podcast and we'll pop up there. We encourage you guys to rate, review, and subscribe. That way you don't miss any editions of the show throughout the remainder of the preseason and on into the regular season. And with that, there's a lot of content coming your way. Tonight, we're doing the Winston-Salem State recap, obviously. Tomorrow, full 2025-2026 season preview. Saturday, that'll be the Central Arkansas preview. Tuesday, we'll have the Central Arkansas recap. Wednesday, we'll have the Kansas preview. We'll also have interviews with Debbie Antonelli and Brendan Marks coming your way next week as well. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, guys, so you don't miss any of our coverage of Carolina basketball as we get the regular season up and started in a big way next week. So with that, folks, that is going to wrap up this edition of the show. I do want to thank Anthony once again for hosting with me. We want to thank all of you for watching and listening. And as always, go Tar Heels.